What happens when you find that you are not your sign? Let's take a deep breath in and get ready for what I'm about to share today. This is one of my most requested topics for people that I meet in person and here on YouTube. People always want to know what happens when I find out that all my life I've been saying I'm a Virgo and I find out I'm really a Leo. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it through the signs. I'll see if I can make some chapters in this video, but I would love if you would listen to the entire thing because you may have friends, family members, children, and people you love and care about, as well as spouses and partners that are not the signs that they believe they are. And you'll want to know who you're actually looking at as you engage in life with them. Peace. My name is Stacy Patrice. Welcome to my channel. All right, so because this is one of my favorite topics, it's primarily because this was very fascinating to me. I share on this channel openly that I have been a Pisces all of my life, to my knowledge. And once I moved over to sidereal astrology, Eastern astrology, Vedic astrology, I realized that I was indeed an Aquarius, a sidereal Aquarius. So I am just talking about sun signs here. And sun signs, are not even the place that you should exclusively look. Of course, you should look at the entire chart, the entire composite. If you want to know more about that, sign up for my course To the East. We start in August of 2026, and you can go ahead and sign up today and get in there and learn about your entire life through sidereal astrology. But in addition to that, you should be looking, of course, at the moon and looking at where the planets are placed in which houses, in terms of what sign they're in. That gives an extra layer. But it's really about positioning in the way that I have people look at their charts. The positions really do matter. And the signs just add what I like to call a little color to what it is that you are looking at, a little color quality. So I think of signs as colors. I think of them as elements, but also sometimes as colors. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit in this video. So let's go ahead and start with Pisces, which is traditionally at the end of the zodiac. And let's move it back to Aquarius. What happens when you're a Pisces and you've been a Pisces your whole life in the tropical system and you find out that you're an Aquarius? Well, the first thing you have to do is remind yourself that you're moving from what is considered to be a mutable sign into what is now a fixed sign, which means that some of that stubbornness that you have about the way that you see things and how they have to go is going to shift because you are actually in a fixed sign. You also have to remember, as you do with any of the other signs, that you are most likely still having some of those signs qualities somewhere in your chart. So, in other words, if you were a Pisces before you found out you were a sidereal Aquarius, chances are you still have something in Pisces in your chart somewhere, or most of the things that were Pisces all shifted to Aquarius, and that's an even better reason to pay attention to what it is that we're doing here. So now that you are an Aquarius, this doesn't mean that you all of a sudden become a different person. This means that the person that you have understood yourself to be is what was operating under the layer of who you were being. In other words, it was always there, but you were slapping a different mask on top, right? So now that I am an Aquarius, I understand myself to be somebody who I can see definitely looks toward what is different, what is odd, what is eccentric. And we often put that with Pisces, but it is so Aquarian. And it's also the person that really wants to look at how humanity should thrive, how we can be together, how we can, connect. So a person that was a Pisces that is now an Aquarian is going to have a mix of those qualities. Maybe the way in which humanity thrives seems a little more creative or a little more spiritual on your behalf because you've known and labeled yourself a Pisces all of these years. But it's very much Aquarian. And that energy is also connected to how it is that you're going to make changes, how you're going to be different. There's a lot of difference when you have a Pisces that is actually an Aquarian. Lots of difference that comes into your life and the ability to be able to only spot, but also impart that kind of difference. And in the course, we talk about different public figures and their different signs and, all of these different things. So the one that I like to use for this, of course, is Erica Badu, right? This person that is very, very much eccentric and a leader and very different and leads from that difference. That is a sidereal Aquarian. It's not a Pisces. So there has to be some understanding that, that is what you have perceived is how it is shifting, and you are bringing brought you're being brought into how that shift looks when a person who you've always thought to be creative, spiritual, and a little bit of aloof or a little bit out there is actually just a futurist who understands and is grounded in their truth and is not moving on it, is actually standing on it and creating from it and helping people from it. So look at that a little differently, okay? And these are just basic descriptions. We get into more in the course, and I might get into more in another video, but I wanted to help people specifically do this because I've been asked, right? So let's move on. What happens when you thought you were an Aries, but you're actually a Pisces? And this is a good one because people always go, nah, 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 I'm an Aries, because they're so used to that identity of being first and the I am, and I'm action oriented and I'm fire and I'm this and I make it move. And Pisces are not like that. So again, we're shifting into the understanding that what we always called one thing is actually the other thing. So when it comes to an Aries that's actually a Pisces, we are still talking about somebody who is taking action, but it's not action from this idea of Mars energy. It's action from this idea of I understand the entire picture, so now I feel ready to move on it. Remember, the sign of Pisces is at the end for a reason. It's at the end of the zodiac. It's like someone who's kind of seen the entire thing. So if you take off this hat, this label of being the baby, of being first, of being, the innocent, and you move into the actual wisdom and knowledge, a lot of your Aries people actually have that, and they are actually Pisces. They have that wisdom. They understand what they're looking at. They understand what they're seeing. They get and can internalize what they're feeling. They know when to move towards something and maybe when to shy away from it before most, right? And we've attributed that to just like a kind of latent quality of a evolved Aries, but it's really a Pisces that we call an Aries. Another thing that I love about these Aries that become Pisces or that are Pisces is the tendency to think that these people are just business oriented. But these people actually love to play in the spiritual realm. They love to play in what it is that they can do, what it is they can achieve. So there is that Aries hat that they have on with the achievements. But who is more ready to take action and achieve something than someone who has studied it, understands it, and feels the push in their body and their system that says go? That's a Pisces, okay? As a person who's lived her whole life as a Pisces up until a certain point, that's a Pisces. So I love these little flips. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the Taurus people who are actually Aries. This one is really important. And sisters, if you are dating men, ooh, we pay attention to this one. What happens when you are dating a Taurus who is actually an Aries? Okay. A Taurus who is actually an Aries is interesting because, Taurus go by this idea of being stubborn and, just the creature comforts and, have everything and all of this. And then people be like, nah, but, Tauruses can be cheap. That's an Aries. That's an Aries, right? So it's like this idea that, this person is cheap. I don't know where that comes from, but I know this to be a fact. Like Tauruses that are actually Aries, they don't have a problem spending money, okay? Like they don't have a problem spending money, but what they spend it on is going to be particular because they're going to take action and spend it on the things that they think are important, which might mean it's more about them than it is about you. And that is not a bad thing. That's just a thing. They're going to prioritize themselves. Like an Aries would. And so, whatever it is you see about them that you think is like, oh, no, I can't believe this, can't believe that. Hey, they're cutting corners somewhere if they're making that happen for you or for anyone else outside of themselves. They are cutting corners somewhere. And inevitably, you might run into one of those corners that gets cut. In addition to that, an Aries is going to be a more fiery kind of lover than you're expecting from a Taurus. Depending on, of course, these are all depending on what else is in the chart, but you might get a bit more of that energy that you weren't expecting because you're expecting a Taurus to be so calm and cool on the surface. When you mess around and find out they're actually not as calm and cool on the surface, actually a lot of fire beneath the surface that you can pick up, and they need that fire. It's very, very different than, the temperament that we talk about when it comes to the Taurus. Also, they might be more action oriented. They might be open to do more things than you're expecting. They might always have things going on. They might have parties and places they like to go and things they like to do and to be out there in nature and to, be the one to protect you, be the one to lead, but also, be the one that has a certain level of like, you know, disconnection. Like, I don't care what other people think. I don't care how this impacts other people, how this affects other people. That can also happen when you have an Aries that you thought was a Taurus. So that's a really important one for me because that one goes from earth to fire. And so that groundedness versus that like energy catches a lot of people off guard, me included, catches a lot of people off guard if you're not looking at the proper placements. So that's an important one to pay attention to. All right, let's move on. So then we have our Gemini that's actually a Taurus. Ooh. Gemini that's actually a Taurus is interesting because again, we're talking about someone who we see as a thinker, someone who we see with a lot of ideas, a lot of conversation, quite loquacious, but then we see them a little more like internal, a little more um introverted, I should say. Not necessarily the person that's going to be in front of everybody. Now, when they're with you and they're comfortable with you, they may talk with you a lot, but not in the way we understand a Gemini, like to be out there, to be a showman. That's like how the ego takes on a hat that doesn't belong on its head, right? So when a Gemini is actually a Taurus, that person is going to have quite a bit more introversion, but they're going to be, generous with their ideas and their time and their thoughts. They may be very helpful in how it is that they move about life because they want to help and they want to assist, like a Taurus does, right? They want to be generous in some way. And so you might see this as this person being, very connected to their work in a sense that whatever it is that they do for work that they're very passionate about, you might see them being more helpful in those ways than other ways. Because a Taurus is really concerned about that comfort, is really concerned about how they set up their life to work. And so there might be generosity, like, well, if you're with me in this introversion of mine, I am happy to share it with you. I am happy to provide that and to give that to you and for you. And it just is a little different sometimes. I think it's also important if you are a Gemini that found out you were a Taurus to really acknowledge that at a certain point, it's not all about what you say. Maybe people are perceiving you for some of those deeper qualities, for some of that groundedness, some of that sage wisdom. It's not just this idea of, being out there as a person that can improve people's lives by the way they think and the way things move. Sometimes some of that energy needs to ground and come home and doesn't need to be out in the world everywhere with everyone at all times doing everything, right? And so I think that is a difference in how that shows up. All right. Now let's move on to the next one. We have someone who is actually what is that? Someone who is actually a Cancer who finds out they're a Gemini. And this one I know super, super well because I am surrounded by them, right? So people who think that they're Cancers and find out that they are Geminis, my goodness, that is such a switch for people because they're so used to taking on, that they're this nurturer and they're this homebody and this home loving person and this and that. And that could still be true because that's who they've understood themselves to be and put that hat on for so long. But what starts to appear when you start to lock into this idea of being a Gemini is that you are always the one that has to make things move. Pay attention to that because a Cancer is very receptive, it's very receiving. But if you realize you're always the one that has to make things move, that is the biggest telltale sign, if you haven't looked already, that you might be a tropical Cancer and a sidereal Gemini. And one of the ways in which this shows up is that, like, you're kind of like the head. It's not like you're the head and you have to sacrifice yourself and you have to be a martyr for nurturing. This frees you up a little bit. This frees you up a bit and says, hey, I'm the one that can gather and collect information and research and find ideas. You're still great investigators, but that's not necessarily a Cancerian trait. Kind of gets filed under protection when you're a Cancer, but when you're a Gemini, it's just an all-out thing that you do. You have to look, you have to, discern, you have to figure out, you have to know where the resources are, how to make them move. You communicate about them. You might be the head of your field because you are the person that can synthesize. And that is the thing that these Cancers that are Geminis actually do the best. They are great with synthesis. They're great in bringing it all together. They're great in helping people to understand the nuance and the difference. And if that ain't Gemini, I don't know what is. So that is a great one. And what do you do with all that loving, nurturing energy? You select and you communicate about it. You select and you say, I'm not going to be able to do this. I can do that. I'm open to this. This I'm going to have to put on the back burner. This is not moving in my life right now. All of those things, welcome. Okay. I know those are things that, people who are tropical Cancers or understand themselves as Cancers are often not comfortable doing, but you get to do it when you are a sidereal Gemini because that's actually who you are. And let's move on to what about the people who think they're Leos that are actually Cancers? My goodness. The people who are Leos who actually find out that they're Cancers, this is pretty incredible because that again is a big difference in terms of our minds. Like, we think of Leo as being like this shining, strong, kind of masculine, radiant energy. And then it kind of turns into this soft, feminine, receptive, nurturing energy. And it's like, what part of the game is that, right? So a person who is a Leo who finds out they are a Cancer is actually someone who is learning that who they are and how they are is actually more about family than they'd be willing to admit. You probably find these people, or maybe you are this person, being way more concerned about family, unity, how we all come together. You want your friends to be your family. You also understand everybody as having a spark like a Leo would, but the spark is not all about you. It's more about a collaboration from that nucleus, that family, whether it's your personal family, whether it's your friends that you consider as family, whether it is the family you've created. All of this together is how these Leos that are actually Cancers function. They collaborate in this way that brings everybody to the light. And they want to provide light for those that they care about. It's so important that they understand that Cancer family nurturing, sensitivity is key and central. They're usually very spot on in their intuition and their instincts. They have a lot of, this understanding of what's actually at play and being able to read people pretty easily. Those are all Cancer traits, but we put on the hat of Leo and think that it's Leo. And what we have to learn is that there's nothing Leo about that, but it's the way we have seen Leo for so long that we believe that when we're looking at sidereal Cancers, they're actually Leos. And so I want you to know that these people are confident. They are not, the martyrs in the way that we've understood in society Cancers to be. They are actually people who are saying it's not just about me. It's about all of us, but you got to treat me well to get that benefit. And that is the thing. I'm receptive to you, but don't play me. Don't mess me over because then the other side comes out. And that's actually Cancer. That's actually the crab within the shell. That's Cancer. He said, don't play me. I will die for you, but don't play me, right? That's the energy of that. And I love watching people have that switch and that distinction where they're like, oh, snap. And that's just one of the big ones. I'm only naming one of the big ones for each one. One of the ones that I observe and notice. It doesn't mean it's the only one, but it's one of the ones that seems consistent across the board. And let's move on to people who are actually Virgos and find out that they are actually Leos. People who are tropical Virgos that find out that they are Leos. My goodness, sometimes this one is tough because I don't know a single Virgo that wants to admit they're Leo. I don't know one. They be like, nah, that can't be me, nah, because the way that I move in life, yeah, nah, I am not that person. I'm all about service. I'm all about, community. I'm all about making sure things are right. I'm about the details. I am, analytical. Uh-huh. Like a Leo, because the way in which you are analytical and the way in which you are critical and the way in which you have the details, it actually centers you. That is the reason why people who encounter Virgos say things about Virgos like, why is it always about you? Why is it, oh, I can't stand a Virgo. They're actually talking about sidereal Leos because they somehow, in your opinion of others, you put yourself in the center. That's not how that's supposed to go. But if you are a Virgo that's actually sidereal Leo, this might be something that people see or say about you all the time because it's not as if your criticism is not spot on. It's not as if your analyzation is not valuable. And it's not as if your service is not needed with those details that you put in there. It's that somehow in the process, you have gathered everybody and pulled them into your web. And when you pull them into your web, it gets a little creepy sometimes because of the simple fact that, you are actually making yourself the center point of influence. And it can be narcissistic, right? Because it's like, I thought this was about everyone else. I thought this was about the people. I thought this was about the community. I thought this was about the way we're supposed to move. It can come across so narcissistic. And it doesn't mean that it is narcissistic, but what it is inflexible. And we know Virgos to be mutable. But when you find a Virgo that's actually a Leo, it's not mutable at all. It's very fixed. It's very centered on their image. It's very centered on their opinion, who they are, and why their opinion is at the top and why that's exactly where it belongs. That's a Leo you're looking at. You're not looking at a Virgo. You're looking at a Leo. You know what I mean? And so, yes, they are often um, celebrities or people that, public figures. Yes, they are often taste makers. Yes, they are definitely often people who are going to hog the whole arena that they exist in. And that is because they see themselves as being where they are at the top. Now, is there going to be a little bit of bringing other people into the fold? Yes, but again, it will be about how they do it. It will be about the fact that they did it. It will be about the fact that they have the details and the nuance to do it better than everyone else. And I really don't care what you say. If you can look across the board, you're going to see this. You're going to see this if you know somebody who is actually, a Virgo. This is the energy that you're going to see. You know what I mean? This is the energy that you're going to see. So I think if a person thinks that they're a Virgo and finds out that they're a Leo, this is just the way that it is, and this is just how they show up in life. And let's move on to the next one. All right, so now we're moving on to people who are actually Libras and find out who are tropical Libras and find out that they're actually Virgos. This is an interesting one too that I have a lot of experience with. I know a ton of Libras and they're all Virgos and they don't know it, but they're all Virgos. And this particular one is interesting because um this has um the energy of like a person. This is the energy of a person who, we say the Libras are about fairness, about justice, about beauty, about, life and moving at the speed of life. And all of this is what we say about Libras. But when that Libra is actually a Virgo, it looks a little different because if they have on that hat of Libra, they could be moving far too fast. They could be moving far too fast. And then them actually being a Virgo means that they have the data, they can be very analytical, and they don't give a lot of space for people to exist. There could be a lot of, making quick conclusions. You know what I mean? When they're in this area, it could be a lot of quick conclusions that are being made because they're like, oh, that's just what it is, and this is how you should move on it. Because they're used to wearing that hat of Libra. They've been conditioned to move like that, to get it done, to get it off their plate, to get it out the way. But part of the reason they function like that is because they're actually a Virgo, and it just doesn't take them as long as other people to be able to see what it is what it is. They look at data, hard facts. They have that, that nature that says that, this is what it is. And sometimes I think that can be very, very off-putting to people because they're not really looking at this from the standpoint of how it is that they move forward. They're like, kind of like, I think the ways in which I do this and the ways in which these things get done is great for people to have, but it just doesn't take me that long. I don't need to spend a lot of time on it. I don't need to go back and forth. I am very, very grounded in how I approach this, and this is just what it is. So I think that is super important, and that's how I look at it. And I also see these people as being very technical. The Libras that are actually Virgos, they're super technical. A lot of times they work in technology. They either work in technology on their day job or they work in technology on their hobbies or their art or the things they do. They're super, super technical. And the way that they put things together is also super technical. They want the deck, they want the stats, they want the information, they want the research, they want everything laid out in a particular way. And then they got like a little wild card they throw in there because you think this person has such technical expertise and you're like, oh, wow, this person is super technical. But then they always throw like a little bit of energy on there because they've been, wearing that hat, where that beauty, where that, that oddness, that kind of like future thinking sometimes comes out. And it's like they're kind of ahead of everyone. They don't always like to let you know they're ahead of them until you try and hold them back. Then they're going to let you know they are ahead of you. And the reason why is they've already evaluated everything. And they're like, all you have to do is let this wild card play out. And if you don't let it play out, it's going to bite you because I know what I'm looking at. And that's probably one of the most frustrating things in the world for them because of that. It's just kind of like, man, I don't really know if this is how I do it, but I feel this is how I do it. And that's how they operate. That's one of the main things I should say that I've noticed. And they also are quite loquacious. Like that communication is really, really strong. They can talk about any and everything. They just got it in the bag like that. So if you are a Libra tropically and find out that you are a Virgo, I am talking to you. And let's move along to the next one. Let's see. So the next one I want to say is a Scorpio that's actually a Libra. Now, this one is a little challenging because we go from a water sign to a an air sign, right? So this is actually challenging. And the ones that I know that fit in this category is kind of interesting because, as a Scorpio, they are so accustomed to being this person that like gets the pass to be vengeful, gets the pass to be gets the pass to be vengeful, gets the pass to be somebody who gets to say what it is they feel, gets to, be deep, gets to work into that area or that arena of like, depth, right? And honestly, it doesn't ever translate as that to me. And so I think this is why, because they're actually Libras, right? So a Scorpio actually being a Libra is an interesting thing because that Scorpio has that hat of who they think they are, who society paints them to be hypersexual, all of the things. But they're actually a Libra, which means they're not as sexy as they have been told that they are. Like, and I don't mean that in terms of looks. I mean that like that's not your main character energy. Actually, your main character energy is way softer, way more feminine in a certain sense. It is definitely like you are connected to beauty, you are connected to the way, the order, the balance, the harmony. So here you are out here trying to be vengeful and disruptive, and your whole MO is actually harmony. Like that is the craziest thing to me. This is one of the ones that still fascinates me to this day because a lot of times it shows up in like this energy, especially, let me see if I can pinpoint where I see it. Like the energy when a person is like, like they want to be the bad, I don't want to say the bad boy or the bad girl, but like that's kind of it, right? Like they want to be that energy so bad, but it's like their heart isn't fully in it. It's not fully there because who they actually are actually could care less about some of the things they have to do, could not care less about some of the things they have to do in order to portray that kind of energy or that kind of dominance. It's just not natural. It's something they have taken on as a behavior. But who they actually are inside of that and that energy is actually wanting to be harmonious, wanting to be just who they are, but have the ability for people to accept that and receive that and to help people and to be someone whose energy is very wound up in the flow of things. And so, we're not stopping the flow, we're allowing the flow. And that's what makes it really different to me is that the flow of how you operate in the world is of a different energy. It is like, yeah, maybe you get revenge if somebody's trying to take advantage of you, or you get revenge if somebody's trying to disrupt your freedom or your justice or your ability to be exactly how you are. And maybe you'll notice that that's what you've done, but that's not the Scorpio stereotypical, vengeance. That is not, it is made of something different than that. It's more or less like you're not going to put, hands on me and keep me somewhere I don't belong when I have the intelligence and the vision for something to be so much bigger than what it is that people are giving me space to do. And so you might see something there with that this person is like, nah, I have to spread out. And they literally have to build this thing. They literally have to build whatever it is that is creating that desire to express freedom and liberation and be able to spread out and stretch out in harmony in the way that they see fit. Like, why would anyone design it any other way? Why would this be designed? My life or what I do or my work environment, my relationships, why would they serve anything else other than this? They have to be harmonious. So we have to find a place where what I'm feeling inside that may eat me up gets redirected into energy and action that allows things to be more balanced and be more just in my life. And you will see that from people who thought they were Scorpios but are actually Libras. And it takes some time to like really cultivate that. And a lot of them might not get that till later in life because of that kind of wisdom that comes from being able to understand what liberation actually is, what justice actually is, and then have all kinds of fun, like a Scorpio, up in there, right? So it's just like that shift. And that's one of the things I noticed that I think is really, really cool. But it is challenging. It still is fascinating, especially if the person hasn't discovered it or hasn't tried to, work with that energy and channel it that way. It's very, very interesting to watch and watch the work that they do too. Their work is usually very much about justice. I mean, some of them are quite actually lawyers and they have that energy and that drive because they want to fight for justice so bad. But by day, they believe they're a Scorpio. So it's very, very interesting. Let's move on to, let's see. So this is people who are Sagittarians in tropical, but are actually Scorpios. And I know this one well too. People who are Sagittarians and think they are Scorpios, or actually Scorpios, but think they are Sagittarians. My goodness. This one is an interesting one because, the Sagittarian complex is very much about being so lucky and, this is, how life is and I'm eternally youthful and I'm happy and I'm free and I'm flirtatious, I can do what I want and I like to swing from chandeliers and have a good time. And I can do this with anybody at any time I want to. And people are like, I don't know about Sagittarians. Sometimes they can be cheaters. I don't know about them. Well, here we go. It's because they're not actually Sagittarians, they're Scorpios. And so, Scorpios, the way that I see Sagittarians who think they're Sagittarians that are actually Scorpios perform in life is they are very much unaware with blinders on how much sensuality and sensual pleasures and especially sex means to them. They will try and pretend like it's not a big deal, but baby, it's a big deal. And it's a big deal that they get to experience that out in the world with as many people as perhaps they want to, or that they get a chance to, sow their oats, so to speak. But the idea is they are very much into what's deep, what's there. And so they often pick intense partners. They often pick intense partners because that Scorpio side of them wants to investigate what that is. And often it's so much more than the sexual energy that they are bargaining for. It's so much more. It like borders on sexual person becoming psychotherapist is what it borders on, right? It's like this energy of like, I am really, really intrigued and interested in people, but I really have this other part of me that wants to know what makes them tick, what's happening, what's underneath that, what's going on, why is it that they are not able to be this person? I want to bring them out. I want to help them be who they are, who I know they are, who I can see they are in front of everyone else. I want them to live their life like that. They're transformers. So, whatever it is about you that they were seeking to investigate in and try and figure out, or if you are this person, whatever you are investigating and looking into someone else, that is the Scorpio side of you trying to get to the depths. And sometimes once you get to the depths and you're able to bring it to the surface, you get so much more than you bargained for. You just thought you were going to transform somebody and bring them through their depths out of the darkness into the light, and you were going to be done? No, that person is going to be looking at you totally different now. They're going to be hanging on to your every word and every movement because you were the magician. You did something for them that no one else has been able to see, let alone bring forward. It is incredible. So it's almost like bringing somebody out of that cave, out of that shell, and then the person who thinks they're Sagittarius is actually a Scorpio. They benefit from that for a while and then they detach because they're ready to move on to the next mystery, the next investigation, the next layer or level of who it is that somebody is. And the thing that's wild about this is that people don't often want to admit that that's exactly what that detachment is. When people talk about people being cheaters, it's not necessarily about being cheaters nor about being polyamorous. It's about the idea that once I know what's in there, and once I have tapped into and discovered the depth, I can only have so long I can play with that before that becomes a problem, before that becomes toxic. And so the person is already on the hook. And the Sagittarius, who's actually a Scorpio, is like, and I got to find a way to get out of this before it gets sticky and tricky. And so I can move on to the next because now I have my eyes set on something else. And it's a perpetual cycle if that person doesn't understand what that energy is. That energy is curiosity. That energy is wonder. That energy is play. And we attribute that to the Sagittarian. And there is an overlap because that wonder and exploration is Sagittarian coded. But the difference is the responsibility and the layers of vengeance. You got to get that in check, Mr. or Mrs. Scorpio. Now that you are a Scorpio, you got to get that in check because you have understood it to just be a kind of laissez-faire, forever young kind of energy. But when you look at it through the lens of a Scorpio, it's actually an energy that you need to heal. Instead of being out here transforming everybody else, you need to take some of that on yourself and find maybe another would-be Sagittarius who's actually a Scorpio who can help bring that out of you. And those are probably the relationships you would enjoy the most. So it's just kind of that energy. I'm gonna be done talking about that. Of course, if you're coming to my course, we'll talk about this more. In my course to the East, make sure you sign up. We are starting in August of 2026. If you're seeing this video in this time frame, it's going to be a wonderful thing as we look at your entire life through this framework. And I look forward to seeing you inside. Go to stacypatrice.com for more details on that. Let's move on to the next one. We are now moving on into Capricorns, people who are Capricorns who find out they are Sagittarians. And this is interesting because Capricorn is such an earthy sign, and Sagittarius is so mutable. But Capricorn, is used to things being the way that they are. It's used to things being on the nose, on the dime, on the dot, the way that things are and used to, climbing and moving and doing. It's kind of like a moving and shaking kind of energy. Like I got places to go, I got things to do. I do not have time to sit around and play with y'all and have these conversations. I got things I got to do, right? And so when there's a person who believes they're a Capricorn, but is actually a Sagittarius, most of what you have to do is move around. Most of what you have to do is explore. That's really what your mind is focused on. It's not as focused on money in the way that people think it is because you just have this innate need to make money. It's focused on money so that you can keep moving around. Your money is the leasing agent that allows you to move. So it's more like, oh, I can't wait till I get to the point where I can move around, where I can, be out here in the world and, be with other people and see other things, see other cultures, other places. I can use this to help me constantly become someone new, to constantly seek and search for what it is in the world that I am most excited about. And it's this idea that who you are is actually like free. You're free. But that Capricorn hat that you wear has taught you, but that money got to be in the right place, because if it's not, I don't feel like myself. And so that's what it comes down to being about. Let you find a would-be Capricorn who's actually a Sagittarius with a bank full of money. They're one of the happiest people in the world because there's always somewhere they want to go, and always something they want to try, and always something they want to do. And they get to do it if they have the means, if they have the ability, if they have the ethic, the work ethic to do it. They get to do it. And a lot of times it's deepening the playing field. These are not necessarily people that are just trying to be superficial. A lot of times they're very deep people. They're not superficial people. They're quite deep. And their depth is actually in learning how to widen the playing field, how to learn more about what they're interested in, how to find more people that they can collaborate, connect with, co-sign, how to find more depth in what it is that they want to study, and find new layers that they can talk about and move into and move from. And I think it's really fascinating. I have a few friends in this placement, and yeah, they seem to be Capricorns on the surface for sure. But what's actually in there in the marrow of the person is actually a person who is deeply curious, who really kind of is a loner, really doesn't need anybody else. They kind of are always youthful and optimistic. And if you look a little bit closer, yeah, that's Sagittarian. And it just shows up sometimes with a front of a hard work ethic. But just know where that comes from. Just know what that serves. That hat that they put on is actually beneficial because it serves their freedom. And then let's move into the next one, which is where we have an actual Aquarius in tropical who is a sidereal Capricorn, right? I know a lot of these as well. Aquarians that are actually Capricorns. I'm gonna just start this the way that it is. They can come across as straight a-holes, right? And you're like, I've never known Aquarians to be that. I've never known them to be that kind of energy. They're always supposed to be the most, generous friends and this and that. And where is that in this person? Well, if you are that, or if other people are that, chances are you can find out that you saying you're an Aquarian gives a false perception of who you are, because this idea of being this future thinking person is always shorted by the idea of who you actually are, which is a Capricorn. You're not worried about the future and humanity like that. You're not worried about trying to be, so generous. I mean, you are generous because you have the hat of generosity, but it's not rooted in the same kind of generosity as what maybe a person would expect in an Aquarian, which is like you can be curt, you can be, very like not in tune with people's feelings, because you're in tune with the work. You're focused on the work. As a matter of fact, not just are you focused on the work and the work you do, you're more concerned about the work that other people do and how that is or is not serving them. You're paying closer attention to how work plays into every aspect of life, and it becomes a part of the personality when you think you're an Aquarius but you're actually a Capricorn. It's like this energy of, being a workaholic, but having some time to, maybe have play moments. And the reason those play moments show up is because you are out of your mind and up to your eyeballs in work. You take on stress like it's a badge. You take it on, right? And so you are a hard worker. You are a disciplined worker. You are a non-stop worker. Those are all wonderful traits because you get the job done. You're going to get it done. You're going to get it done. Nobody needs to second guess or doubt you or be like, hey, yo, I don't really know about this person. No, bet on them. They're going to get it done. They said they were going to do it. They signed up to do it. It's going to be done. And chances are it's going to be done well. But you do need to move out of their way because they are like a truck, like a Mack truck. Don't get in my way with your lack of details. Don't get in my way with not understanding how the system moves and how it works. Please do not get in my way with your ideas about what it could be, what it should be. Can we work with what is here, the matter? So it's not this eccentric, esoteric kind of personality that we know an Aquarian to be. It is very grounded and is very grounding. And if you don't want to be grounded, it can be forceful. It is making something fit into the construct that they know is present. And that is not Aquarian. And it's also, it doesn't have the kind of, religious or spiritual connotations that Aquarian has. It has a more like, there's a way to do things. And when I find out the way, that's the way it's going to be done. There is very much a way when it comes to an Aquarius that's actually a Capricorn. And the way that they might see it is it might be softened a little bit because the way they don't really have permission to just be the Mack truck. They take it in the work context because that is permission. They have the role, but in their daily lives, it's like they are understanding that it's there, but they're constantly trying to find the boundary between what doesn't make them a jerk to people and also them being really effective at what they do. And they're constantly coming across, sometimes a little unsure, but they're really confident, or coming across a little shady, but they're really certain about what it is that they want to get across and they're not compromising on it. And it's very interesting to watch because if we let them just be the Capricorns they are, they will have all of this junk in order. They will have it in order. There will be money attached to it, price tags. It will be abundant. It will be efficient. It will help people in the way that an Aquarian wants to. It will do all of that. But what it will not do is make you feel good sometimes in the process because it's not about your feelings. It's not about you. It's about the work at all times. And that is how that moves. And then lastly, is that lastly? Let me see. I was talking about the Aquarian. Yeah, the Pisces. We started at the Pisces. That's the Aquarius. I think we're done here. So I had to go through all of that at the top of my head. I woke up. It's early. I woke up today with this whole idea of coming to talk to you all about this. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. Of course, this just scratches the surface. This is just simply, what it is from the beginning, and and if you want to learn more about how you find your sidereal identity in full, To the East is my program. It starts in August. You can find out more information at stacypatrice.com/to the East. And we start and we go on this beautiful journey. And this is my favorite part of it. There's so many more examples, so much more information, so many more layers. It's like a lasagna. There are layers in which we move from this basic understanding that I'm presenting here of the sun sign switches. And we help you to switch from your tropical to sidereal identity throughout your entire chart by really putting together the pieces. It's like a map that we're looking at, and you're going to put together the pieces so that you're able to understand yourself in all ways and learn why just the signs, or the constellations as we call them, as we move into that deepening of the signs, is just simply the color, a quality of all that you are. It is not the entire thing. So we got to find a way to evolve these conversations beyond the sun sign, evolve and beyond, I'm actually this and I used to be this, but now I'm that. We actually evolve that entire process, and we do it together and provide plenty of space for you to make these connections in your everyday life on your terms and start to learn and draw into your process, this process. And the more that you have time to do that over the 8 weeks that we do this together, the more you will be able to flip conversations, flip understanding, and flip identity on a dime. And you'll be able to do it with information backing you and guiding you and making you feel really fantastic because you have all of that information at your disposal, no matter what your sun sign is. All right. And I look forward to seeing you all. Please like, share, comment how your section resonated with you, whether you are the sign that you watched or whether it is someone you are dating, seeing, family, whatever have you. People that you say you can't stand, did it explain why? Because they're not the thing that we say they are. They're the other thing. Put those things in the comments. Let's get this conversation going. I can't wait to talk with you all and read your comments. And I can't wait to see you in the course. It's a good time. Do sign up, 8 weeks. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Peace.